Myanmar TzuChi volunteers carry out relief work for flood victims in Bago Province. In Taiwan, we look at the traditional calculation methods many Taiwanese grew up learning. Welcome to our headlines. I'm Wendy Chen. Thank you for joining us. First up in Myanmar, at the end of October, Taun-goo City in Bago Province experienced torrential rain, causing the worst flooding in the region in 30 years. To help, Yangon Tzu Chi volunteers arrived to carry out a disaster assessment and were able to right away hand out relief items with help from the military and members of the public. In all, 1,001 households received help. With soldiers helping guide the way, TzuChi volunteers from Yangon arrived at Taun-goo City in Bago Province to help with what residents are calling the worst flooding in the past 30 years. Though having travelled some 240 kilometers and arriving past midnight, come sunrise, volunteers make their way to the affected villages, wading through water for 1.5 hours before arriving at the riverbank. Finally getting on small boats just past midday, volunteers arrive at the villages only to find residents still living in temporary shelters and without food to eat. Upon seeing the arrival of the TzuChi volunteers, the village head takes out a name list of 1,001 households all devastated by the flood.
The military came to distribute hot meals. What we need the most now are daily necessities like clothes, rice, and medication.
TzuChi is the only charity organization to have visited these residents, and volunteers promised to return with aid supplies. Luckily, volunteers came across many kind-hearted people, such as a hotel owner who helped purchase rice and teachers and students who volunteered to pack the relief items. Aid supplies included rice, beans, cooking oil and other daily necessities were then transported to the disaster areas by soldiers. The next day, volunteers returned to the village where residents are already waiting to welcome their arrival. This is the first time after the flooding that the atmosphere has lightened up in the village.
We've never received so many aid supplies before. I'm so happy that I don't feel hungry anymore.
Besides aid supplies, volunteers also organized a free clinic for residents.
We don't have money to visit a doctor. When we are in pain, we just buy painkillers.
In the 3 villages that were most devastated by the flooding, TzuChi volunteers are seen on site reaching out with helping hands.
Seeing you all coming from so far, I am deeply moved.
TzuChi volunteers hope with the help from the general public and the military to deliver all relief items into the hands of the villagers before sunset.